For the sake of unifying this country, will you concede the 2020 election and turn the page on that chapter?
No. No, why would I do that?
So continuing our day-long analysis of Donald Trump's disastrous but bombshell interview with Kristen Welker of Meet the Press, Trump, of course, took the opportunity to relitigate the 2020 election, and perhaps even more disturbingly, when pitched as the opportunity to unify the country by conceding the 2020 election, Trump categorically refused. It is perhaps the most maddening part of a very maddening interview. And to help me with this analysis, I've got the one, the only, my friend and yours, Luke Beasley of The Luke Beasley Show. What's going on, Luke?
Oh, Josiah, I'm doing very well as an individual. I'm doing the opposite of that with this Trump interview. And I just covered it on my show, and I really was very close to a meltdown the entire time.
Well, maybe we'll help get you there by relitigating it now. So with that in mind, let's throw up the first clip, because there are multiple ones. This is actually not even the most frustrating part, but it tees us up for the most frustrating part. So this is Trump broaching the topic of the 2020 election.
If I won that election, which you know how I feel about it, I won't get into it because we don't need to start that argument. I think it's an easy argument. It was really proven even more conclusively by the win that I had on this one. But
you did get a point, sir.
Well, that's your opinion, but I disagree with it.
So, Luke, listen, we're friends. You and I are friends. We're personal friends. We've had disagreements before. Imagine during one of those disagreements, I say to you, Luke, we don't have to start this argument. By the way, if we did start this argument, I would kick your ass in this argument because I have all the facts on my side and everything is proven to correct, but I don't want to start the argument. What do you think about that diplomatic strategy from the incoming president of the United States? And then we'll get obviously into the merits of what he was saying, but just the whole way he broached the topic.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, because it's like he's saying something so obvious. It's how I would speak to a Trump supporter about the election. I don't want to get into that with you, but obviously I'm the one who has all the facts on my side on the legitimacy of the 2020 election, as shown by how y'all have treated the 2024 election. I know we'll get into that, but that would be more justified, because it's like, in my case, I might not want to discuss it with you, but it's been so thoroughly litigated that I know you're not going to come out victorious if we debate this. For him to have that tone in his voice and to articulate that, I know he's always a narcissist, and I know he's always like this, but him winning and him being told that he has, another thing we'll get into, this unprecedented landslide, you crushed the popular vote and everything, whenever, we'll address that later, he has an extra level of smugness now.
Yeah, so it's funny. I mean, I haven't said this. Of course, I've been thinking it. Obviously, on the merits, it's terrible that Donald Trump won the election. I don't want to take that away, because even during the course of this interview, that he has threatened to do and what he's doubled down on would be truly disastrous, not just for liberals and progressives and women and blue cities, blue state, and marginalized groups and everybody else, but also for his own supporters. But what takes that and makes it just a little bit worse is how smug so many Trump supporters and MAGA Republicans are, including Trump himself. And I got to say, I appreciate the fact that Kristen Welker did say, sir, you did lose it. But I'll be honest with you, part of me does, and we'll get into this as well because it ties so neatly in, Mehdi Hasan and others of the, British-style adversarial interviews, they would say this is probably the point where you just dig your heels in and say, actually, we're not proceeding to the rest of the interview until I just really drill in the fact that this is not a matter of opinion, sir. You did lose the election. It's a matter of fact. So I wish you would push back more, but I am at least pleased that she did the bare minimum by acknowledging to his face that he lost the election. Before we play the next clip, and I do have one more, I just want to say, have you been hearing a lot, Luke, about this election actually proves that the previous election was stolen because I won the popular vote and I beat the Democrats?
So much. So much. Oh, how did 7 million votes magically vanish from Democrats? As if it's not always the thing, always, forever, since the beginning of time, and will always be, that parties get different amounts of votes each go round. And it makes sense given the underlying conditions that people were responding to, even though the misdiagnosis of those conditions is a whole issue with the outcome of the election, why it went the way that it did. But people, because of the conditions, were more likely to be less passionate to go vote if they aligned with the party in power, being the Democratic Party in this case, but different ones in different countries, a part of this broader trend. And so I think this is the perfect example of how, if you're a conspiracy theorist, everything confirms your conspiracy,
Yes.
no matter what.
No, 100%. If he lost the 2024 election, they stole another election. If he wins the 2024 election, which he did, well, it's proof that the last election was stolen. It's unfalsifiable. It's 100% the trap of conspiracy theories. Now, with that in mind, I want to play this next clip, which is, to me, the most egregious of them, which is the way Kristen Welker frames it. She says, okay, listen, you have a chance to unify the country, which, by the way, Luke, I know you've heard this, I've heard this. So many MAGA Republicans say, listen, Trump talks a lot of smack during the campaign, which in and of itself is just objectively bad. But, once he wins, he's really going to be dedicated to unifying the country. Well, Kristen Welker gives him the opportunity to do just that explicitly on the topic of the election. And this is his response.
Sir, I don't have to tell you this because you've talked about it. It comes at a time when the country is deeply divided. And now you're going to be leading this country for the next 4 years. For the sake of unifying this country, will you concede the 2020 election and turn the page on that chapter?
No. No, why would I do that? But let me just tell you, when
won't
you
ever
say the
concede.
country is deeply divided, I'm not the president. Joe Biden's the
But
president.
you're going to be the president.
No. I'm not the president. So when you say it's deeply divided, I agree. But Biden's the president, I'm not. And he has been a divider. And
Sir, I don't have to.
So, man, just so much wrong. Oh, my God, so much wrong. So much wrong. Let's just start with the big one first, which is, and I thought this was actually brilliant of her. This was good, okay? You've said, since you won the election, all that divisive rhetoric, that was just, that was you talking during the campaign. You want to bring the country together. Well, here's your chance to put your money where your mouth is. And he just categorically rejects it. No, why would I do that? Well, she just gave you the reason to do that. Your lies are dividing the country. They led to the first insurrection against the United States, fomented by a sitting president, you, Donald Trump. And he says, it's like he can't even compute that sounds freaking stupid, Kristen. Why would you ask me that? What did you think of her question and how he answered it?
Actually, Jaden, prepare this next clip. Let me throw it up because he, at a different point, did answer why do you think the 2024 election wasn't rigged. I think that's telling as well.
Democrats have control of the White House now. They didn't in 2020. If they are going around stealing elections, why
when you
didn't
say
they do it
Democrats
this
have
time?
control now,
Of the White House.
Yeah.
So why didn't they steal this election? Since they have more power now.
because I think it was too big to rig.
So, to our previous point, all right, it's unfalsifiable, and they feel vindicated in saying whatever they'd like. So, to answer your question, Josiah, it's shameful, it's horrible, it's enraging that he gets to do this. And I'm so sad that people were misled about the cause of price increases and misblamed those things, that people were misled about what Trump stands for and what he's going to stand for in this term. That's heartbreaking to me. And I don't want people to be punished for being misled in a complicated world. But we're about to be punished. And so it makes me so mad a little bit, I have to be honest, at people, because this isn't new. It's not like we're going, oh my gosh, he's not going to concede. He won't concede that election way years ago. Still? No, he's been doing it the whole time. We know that's the case. His whole thing is never admit defeat. And so we have to sit here and give them the benefit of having an opposing side that does respect democracy when we never get that benefit. And we're going to get into the data on this, but it's not the same. I've now debated with a few different MAGA people since the election, and it just went on one where it was 1v3, me versus 3 right-wingers, and it's like they can't get their head around they're on the side with the lack of respect for our democratic institutions. And it's not really a matter of opinion, but they keep saying these bizarre false equivalencies like, oh, well, Democrats are upset now that Trump won, which isn't even close to the same thing as using lies to try to justify preventing the democratic process from going forward, as happened last time, or refusing to concede. To this day, he has nothing to lose now by conceding except for his sensitive, delusional worldview, which is that he can never lose anything.
Yeah. So both these clips are just like the double gut punch there. It really is frustrating. So again, in the first clip, or rather the second clip that we played, where he ends it, he's like, okay, yeah, the country is divided, but I'm not the president. What's interesting is, when it's convenient for Trump, he pretends he's powerless and inconsequential. So no, he's not the president, but he's still one of the most powerful men on earth. He commands cultishly the devotion of one of two major political parties. He's the president-elect. He will be the president in a matter of days. That carries enormous power and influence. So yes, Donald Trump's contributions to the division in this country didn't end when he left the White House, okay? So he wants you to believe, well, all the division is because of the Democrats. And I hear this from MAGA Republicans all the time. Obama was the divider in chief, and then Biden's really divisive. And like Trump was, I guess, just this, soft wallflower or something like that, when it's obviously not true. The divisive rhetoric, if we could do a forensic audit of all the times that President Biden or a prominent Democrat have said something potentially divisive, like I'm thinking of President Biden's Independence Hall speech back in 2022, where the red and blue lights and MAGA was freaking out. Oh, he dared call some MAGA Republicans a threat to democracy. Well, let's say you count that as divisive. Now, I would say, well, Biden also went out of his way to say not all Republicans, not most Republicans, like he tried to couch it in disclaimers. Trump never does that. But even if you count that as divisive, for every one example you can find of Biden being publicly divisive, Luke, you and I could find 5 to 10 to 20 examples of Trump. So again, there's a total asymmetry where Trump is objectively worse. We will always win that debate. They will always lose that debate. They know it. But the other interesting thing about that is then when it comes to the stock market or the economy, Luke, then he says, it's all because of me. Well, wait, you're not the president. You have no official power. You have influence politically. So you see what he does when it's convenient. It's all because of him. When it's inconvenient, well, I'm not in the White House. Interesting how that works. And then that last clip that you teed up, hearing, it's just really, really frustrating to hear this sort of thing. Well, it's too big to fail. It was a landslide. Well, and if you want to, we don't even have to bring it up, but just saying like 1.5% popular vote swing. He didn't even win the popular majority, who won the plurality so far. So yes, he got more votes than Vice President Harris, but more people, in fact, at the time of recording, voted for somebody else, either Harris, third party, or a write-in, than Donald Trump. Is it still a win? Sure. We acknowledge that because we're consistent. Trump and his ilk are not. And President Biden won the popular vote by 4.4%. So to the extent that popular votes are reflective of a landslide or a mandate, Biden had more of a landslide and more of a mandate in 2020 than Trump ever did. And Biden also won the House and the Senate as well. So there's no way to square this. And I'll also say, Luke, before we get into the data real quick, the next time you go on Piers Morgan, I want you to think about that second clip that Trump had, where again, Kristen says, for the sake of unifying the country, will you just acknowledge that? Because as you know, every time you're on, Piers tries to hit you with how the Democrats are worse, and you'll have that in your back pocket. Well, wait a minute, Piers, your buddy Trump, he was just recently asked on film, on camera, if he would take steps to unify the nation by acknowledging the simple, basic, unimpeachable fact that he lost an election, which is something, Piers, that you have said, you've acknowledged it. And Trump says, no, why would I do that? And I want you to keep that in your back pocket because Piers will have no defense against it. And I'm looking forward to seeing that moment go viral. So teeing you up for that. Last thing, you talk about the data. Can you pull that screen up?
Yeah. You want specifically this?
Yeah, this one right here. So Luke, what do you think about this friggin' number here showing that, when it comes to trust in institutions, that between 2020 and 2024, yes, do we see Democrats flip a little bit from 94% in 2020 to 84% in 2024? Yes. But what about that difference with Republicans, Luke?
So to explain it, just for anyone who's listening to the podcast, what we're looking at is when Republicans lost in 2020, Republican voters, only 21% had trust in our elections. And then they win in 2024, and 93% of Republicans have trust. Holy smokes. Whereas Democrats win in 2020 with a 94% trust, and when they lose, it only drops to 84%. Not even close at all in any world to the phenomenon we saw on the Republican side. What's the takeaway from that, Josiah?
Well, it seems like the only basis by which, or the only standard by which you evaluate whether institutions are to be trusted are if they deliver specific results for Republicans. That's what the data seems to show me, that the only way that the Republicans define trust as in, does this get me specifically what I want? If it does, I trust it. If it doesn't, no matter how legitimate the means, no matter how many 60 court cases or forensic lawsuits, none of that matters, Luke. Does it deliver the specific outcome I want? And if it doesn't, then support and trust in those institutions plummet in a way it simply does not for the Democratic Party.
Do they not understand the only thing preventing us from completely spiraling out of control and collapsing as a democracy is us? The only thing that stands between where we are now and a total democratic crisis is that our side, our coalition, has respect for our democratic process even when we lose. 84% still. I've told you before, even on our side, there's a lot of wacky folks with a lot of views, and I even understand feeling like, and still, the vast, vast, vast majority say, it's still legitimate.
Yeah, it's just...
Sorry, but just
no. Go ahead.
Can they imagine if we did what y'all did? If we did I'm almost about to vomit saying this because I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of making arguments that doesn't apparently change people's minds because it's not about the facts on this. It's about people's feelings. And if we try to block the peaceful transfer of power right now, as Trump tried in 2020, and then that's what happened every time elections happen, both sides were trying to block the peaceful transfer of power. That's how you lose your democracy, people. So at least apologize. To your point, at least do the unifying thing of conceding the election from years ago. You won already. You got it. You woohoo, woohoo, woohoo. You could concede then. But still, they won't demonstrate a shred, a scrap, an iota of respect for our democracy as we have to sit here. They don't do it, but we do it. We get punched in the face over and over and over, and still we're like, nah, we're not going to punch. And it's admirable that we don't. But it's just... it's mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling. And here's the thing. It's like, I'm going to use a tortured metaphor of an airplane, but the fact of the matter is an airplane doesn't simply crash simply if it loses both wings. Any like pilot will tell you for some reason, your 747's wing just flies off, the right-hand wing. Even having one, it's not enough. You still can spiral that way. It's, a tailspin. And so to your point, I think it does matter that, President Biden and the Democrats did concede the election, did commit to a peaceful transfer of power. I also totally respect and would advise that the Biden administration, the outgoing Biden administration, not be seen as too chummy with the incoming Trump administration because it suggests an incongruity. I would like there to be a professional, civil, but yes, distant relationship between these two organizations. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't have reciprocity, if we don't have another half of the country, another political party that will commit to peaceful transfers of power, then before too long, unless this trajectory changes, we will be in serious jeopardy. Democrats alone, the country can't survive enough on simply Democrats observing the norms. By definition, you have to have reciprocity. So point well made, but we're still in serious jeopardy. And I think it's super pathetic and damning of Trump to have that question framed that way. Will you take this basic step of unifying the country? And he says, no, why would I? That coming from the incoming president of the United States, that's just what a damning answer. But Luke, where can people find you?
You can find me at Luke Beasley on YouTube. Josiah, always an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, man. Thank you for collaborating.